Thank you, Dr. Thomas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the most exciting part of your Tuesday. Another beautiful Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum. My name is Winston Robinson. I am your facilitator, along co-facilitators, Ms. Laura McClady, Ms. Carlinia Ivory Canty, Ms. Jackie Edwards Walton, Ms. Nathalie McElrath, Ms. Mary Johnson, Mr. Shea Abdullah, Mr. Gary Young, Ms. Jasmine Wright, our website editor and archivist, Steve Johnston, our chaplain, Ms. Sharika Sherrill, and house musician, Dr. Thomas. Our forum begins at 8:30 a.m. and concludes at 9:40. I'm just start saying 10. Is that supposed to be 9, but we always get out of here at 10. All right, at which time we will pause for announcement. No, see, they got to hear themselves. Our forum runs from 8:30 to 9:45 a.m., at which time we will pause for announcements. Announcements can also be sent to Steve at S. Johnston, that's Johnston with a T, at TuesdayForumCharlotte.org. We always begin with a prayer. Now, typical givers of that prayer are not here today. So, Mr. Pride Pat, you wanna lead it? Yeah, so
that's the deacon.
Yeah,
we got a deacon in here.
Yeah, his name is Pride Pat. The Church of North Carolina Central.
Yes, sir. All right, so I guess I'm just standing for the bishop, Mr. Kenneth Cruz this morning. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you once again for an opportunity for another day, another opportunity to touch lives, Lord, to inspire someone that may not know you in the free pardon of their sins. Lord, we ask that you just continue to bless this forum, Lord, that it continues to produce good fruit, Lord, that it continues to meet the needs of the community. We ask that you bless the facilitators that give of their time generously each and every week, Lord. I am personally thankful for what they bring to this forum every day. Lord, we ask that you bless the presenter this morning, Lord, that he may continue the tradition of Ms. Sarah Stevenson, Lord, being a community activist and a leader. These are the blessings we ask in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. You just got hired.
There you go. There we go. Sister Pastor.
So if we have anyone here for the first time, if you would please announce yourself and any affiliations that you would like to mention.
Good morning, my name is Raven Morris. I'm an intern with the Center for Racial Equity and Education. And we were encouraged to come here today.
Nice. Good to know they still have that. All right. So our guest today is Mr. Nate Hogan from the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance. And our topic today is aiding growth of business leaders. Following the presentation by Mr. Hogan, we will take questions from the audience. Please raise your hand and we will add your name to a list. I will call on you in which the order your name was added to said list. Questions should be questions. Questions also should be no longer than 30 seconds. The answer you receive is the answer you got to deal with, because we do not debate at the Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Forum. We have a timekeeper. Her name is Ms. Nathalie McElrath. She has signs, so that's the hard one. That's the hard line. You got to stop right there, but you get a warning before, which says you have 30 seconds. So, we'd like to begin with having a moment for silence. And that's when you take your phone and put it on silent. Use this moment to not be the one to disrupt our amazing presentation because you got a notification. All right. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, please, Mr. Nate Hogan.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you. First, let me just say I'm honored and humbled to have an opportunity to just share a little bit about the work that we're doing, about myself as well. understand the significance of being here and the history here as well. And so I'm just really thankful and humble, honored to be able to present for you guys. So my name is Nate Hogan. I'm president of the CLT Alliance Foundation, or the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance Foundation. So I'll kind of start by sharing a little bit about me, how I ended up here, and then I'll talk about the Alliance, give you some historical context on the Alliance and our sister organization, which I'm responsible for, the Alliance Foundation. And then I'll talk about the situation that I came into leading this organization into the future, and where we are today and where we're going into the future. And hopefully that will give you a really good amount of context around who we're here to support, how we're supporting them, and what ultimately our goals are as we work to really start running and grow businesses more effectively and productively in the Queen City and the entire region as well. So I've been in Charlotte for almost 2.5 years now. I'm originally from Kansas City, Missouri, specifically. You may have heard of our World Championship Chiefs. Jay has heard me talk about this enough. But that's home for us. And I actually come by this sort of equity-centered work through a series of family tragedies that are eerily similar. So at 10 years old, I lost one of my sisters to violence. At 19, I lost my father to violence, although I could have predicted that one. He was, in the wrong crowds, doing the wrong sort of things. And so was not surprised, but a loss nonetheless. But what really sort of fundamentally shook me up and changed my life was October 24, 2014, I lost my oldest son also to violence. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong crowd. And as you can imagine, life gives you two options in that moment. You can just sort of roll over and give up. Or you can start to think about, and for me it was subconsciously, but you can start to think about what is God trying to teach you through these tragedies, right? And so as I sort of moved through life after that, and I spent my time as an entrepreneur, I ran a mortgage business that I started, and then an intrapreneur, so growing businesses inside of large corporate enterprises, excuse me, and a corporate executive. But really not a lot of that stuff was fulfilling, and I didn't realize it at the time, but I was working on behalf of a friend of mine who wanted to run for the city council. It had no experience. I had run for state senate on the Kansas side at one point, so I at least understood what the process was like and was trying to really support him. And I met a young lady who said, "Hey, you really should run for the school board." And I thought, I'm going to pass. I had no interest in running for school board. Kansas City Public Schools, up to that point was still in a very, they had started to improve, but prior to that, it was in a very dysfunctional state. The constant every 2 years turning over superintendent. I know in the city of Charlotte, we're familiar with that. We don't give enough credit to the fact that these superintendents are being put through a meat grinder in those roles. They're extremely difficult jobs, and they're not even paid what they should be. But I declined. And so about a month later, her name is Melissa, she called me and Melissa said, "Hey, I really think you should run for the school board." And I said, I appreciate the compliment, I guess, but I'm just not interested. And she said, "Well, you at least owe me coffee." So I said, she got me. I do have to go have coffee with her. And I sat down and she just made a really compelling argument for me. She said, "Look, you not just physically look like these kids in Kansas City Public Schools, but you grew up in the same neighborhood, you went to the school district, you got a bunch of corporate experience, which we think would be really useful inside the school district, and so maybe you should run." And I thought, man, I don't know, but I did. I was coming into those school doors with a backpack full of books and a whole bunch of trauma with me, right? And that's exactly what our kids were going through, right? And we expect them to be model students, not even recognizing that they've been through these things in life that most other people just can't even comprehend. So I went home, I had a conversation with my wife, and she said, "Look, understand it's going to be really, really hard. I support you if that's what you want to go do, but you just know this is not going to be an easy task." And the next day I had a conversation with a well-respected leader in Kansas City who I admire, is a good friend of mine, and he said, "Nate, there's a bunch of people in this community who want to get involved with Kansas City Public, or want to get involved with education, but want nothing to do with Kansas City Public Schools." And it just stung, right? It didn't sit well for me. I woke up the next day with this sort of empty feeling in my gut. And I thought, man, this is exactly why I should run, actually. right? Leaders don't run away from problems, you run towards them. It doesn't mean they're going to be easier. But if I have something to add, if I feel like I've got value to give back to these students in our community, then I should do this. And so I took the leap of faith and started serving the Kansas City School Board. My peers right out of the gate elected me as vice chair of the board, and I dove in. And when I tell you I dove in, it was head first into the fire, and I lost myself in that experience. It was, at the time, the most fulfilling professional thing I'd ever done. Nothing even came close, right? And in Missouri, school board members don't get paid. I mean, across the country, they don't get paid very well in general, but in Missouri, you don't get paid at all. So I'm essentially an elected volunteer, pouring myself into these kids. And what I realized is every day that I was waking up and going to my paying job, I was getting less and less interested in that job, right? Because my heart was being poured into these kids. And then I got elected by my peers 2 years later as board chair. And one of the things that I focused on is how do we get our school district back to full accreditation? We had a great superintendent there who was making the right moves, a lot of really good decisions. The outcomes were trending in the right direction for our students, but the state school board was still fighting us around giving us full accreditation. And we think our kids are stupid, right? They're walking in the door, they know that they're going to an unaccredited school district, right? And that has some shame that goes along with it, even for our youngest students. And so, the state school board continued to sort of push back and, well, let's keep the conversation going. Well, I was getting sick of the conversation. The conversation wasn't moving the meter, right? We needed action for this school district. And so through me pushing them a lot, and then the work that Dr. Bedell and his team was doing to sort of move the academic meter, we got our school district back to full accreditation for the first time in 21 years. And it was an incredible experience, but I also knew that I wasn't going to run again. 4 years was enough for me, and again, I was lost though outside of that work. And so going back to my full-time job without something to sort of augment it, one day I just sort of woke up and said, I can't do this private sector for-profit thing anymore. And look, I'm not the guy who doesn't believe in making profits. I'm what I consider a responsible capitalist, which is very different than just a capitalist. Right? Wealth should be distributed more equally, and so I just couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't wake up every single day thinking about how it helped other people, particularly large corporate enterprises, make a bunch of money. And so it was at that point I decided, okay, I've got to do something different. And I had fallen in love with Charlotte back in 2017. You may remember the NBA had their All-Star Weekend here. Then they were a client of mine at the time, and so I came in to support the executive team for that weekend. And honestly, the only thing I knew about Charlotte at the time is that it was in North Carolina. I mean, it's embarrassing. That's literally all I knew about Charlotte. I spent all my time, of course, in Uptown, and was just blown away. It's clearly like a city that was growing. You still had a bunch of cranes in the air, a bunch of shiny buildings. The people were nice, which was really, really familiar to me coming from the Midwest. And I left going, man, that's a cool city. And I just kind of filed it away as a potential vacation spot. I mean, that was sort of what I walked away with. And then November 2021, I got wind of the Mayor's Racial Equity Initiative. I saw the press release and I went, oh, this is a different city, right? It felt different. And I started doing some research online trying to find another city who had this $250 million public-private partnership. And it was a challenge that the mayor made. And you guys probably know, she didn't go to the city council and ask permission, right? She just stepped out in boldness and said, this is what we're going to do. And who on city council was going to buck you at that point, right? Focus on 4 areas of racial equity. It is not a perfect tool or mechanism, right? I don't think anyone expects it to be, but I had never seen anything quite like it. And so then I started thinking, maybe this is an opportunity to go live, work, and play in this community that I thought was interesting. Well, at the time, I had spent about 2 years at a government technology company, was brought in to grow their health practice. And it took me about 2 months to realize they didn't have a health practice at all. What they had was a piece of technology that they thought would magically grow, which is not how business works at all. So in January of 2012, I went to my leadership team and said, I think you need to lay me off, lay half of my team off, run out existing contracts, and shut the business down. It was the right thing to do for the larger organization. Felicia Hogan wasn't super excited when I came home and told her about my day. She's like, wait a minute, so you put your job on the line with no other job. And I was bored to tears with it. And again, I was all of my thoughts were going back to how fulfilled I was as a school board leader, and so I couldn't do that anymore. My leadership team came back April of that year and said, yep, we think it's the right decision. We negotiated through a severance package. And in July of 22, I started coming to Charlotte every month for a week at a time on my dime, because I wanted to really understand this marriage racial equity thing. Is it real? I wanted to understand this community. If we were going to move here, I wanted to make sure that I had community around me when we landed. We had never relocated our family before. So this was really important for me to go through this exercise and make sure, because that woman at home would have held me accountable every hour of every day if I moved here and it wasn't the right decision. And so I did that. So between July and December of 22, I met about 50 people in person here. And in December, I got wind of this opportunity. They put me through the paces. I'll never forget my final interview. In the room is Keith Cockrell, Malcolm Coley, Janet LeVar, who was the first CEO of the Alliance. One guy who was my peer, was going to be my peer at the time, a guy who was going to be reporting to me, an HR person, and the person who would be my board chair, all in the room. And it was about as intimidating of an environment as you could sit in. But reflecting on that afterwards, I thought, man, this is just another reason why this is the right place for us, because I had never been in a room with so many diverse leaders in the same place, right? And in August, I should rewind, in August of 22, the first event I went to was at the Foundation for the Carolinas, and it was a panel discussion around building a pipeline of African-American leadership. And I remember walking into that lobby that you go in there, it's got all this art and stuff, it's really beautiful. In the room, I'd say probably 80-85% of the room were Black leaders. So in Kansas City, proportionally it's about the same from a demographic perspective, right? 35-40% Black. But in Kansas City, the Black leaders who are middle class move out to the suburbs and never contribute back into the city, right? You don't find, I've never been in a room like what I was in that August, and I went, man, and then I get the validation through reflection of that interview. And so it was just, when I got the call to come in and do this work, I was just blown away, and started February of 23. It's been one of the coolest journeys of my life. I never would have thought I would be able to pull it off. In fact, halfway through that July to December timeframe, I almost gave up. I had a good friend push me to keep moving, and got the job. So that's how I got here. We do still have two surviving boys, a 31-year-old and a 25-year-old. My middle son, TJ, just proposed to his long-term girlfriend in Spain when we were over there about a month ago. She said yes, so that was really cool. And then my youngest, and he's an architect, and my youngest son is our creative kid trying to figure out life, as so many of us have to do in that time frame of our journeys. And so that's who I am. Been married for 26 years, been together 28 years. So yeah. Okay, so let me talk about the Alliance and the Alliance Foundation. So two different organizations. In 2018, the boards of two previous organizations, the Charlotte Chamber and the Charlotte Regional Partnership, came together and decided, look, we've got duplication of resources across these two different organizations that feel on the surface like they're doing similar things. We need to combine them into one. So in 2018, the legal entity, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, was formed. In 2019, I mentioned Janet LeVar was the first CEO to come in and lead the organization for the first 5 years. And then the Charlotte, or the CLT Alliance Foundation, the organization I run, was an asset that came over with the Charlotte Chamber. And so when I came in, we had one program called Scale Up CLT. And Scale Up CLT is a business accelerator focused on helping minority and women-owned small businesses between $250,000 and $1 million in revenue grow to the $1 million mark. So we've been around, we're about to launch our 7th cohort. So we've done 6 years that we've completed. And it's a phenomenal program. It is, it's focused on, you can do it for 3 years, but it's a 1-year program. And you have 4 learning days. One is on strategy, one on people or HR, one on execution, and one on cash or your financials. Full day learning sessions, and then you have monthly accountability groups. So you do 4-hour sessions with your accountability group. And so we break our cohort up into smaller businesses. You may have 5 in a cohort, and we assign a mentor or coach. It's different from every other accelerator program in the region in that I call it the FUBU model. So it's for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, right? We are not teaching theory in those classes. It's not academic. It's really about, to even be a facilitator or a coach or a mentor in the program, you have to have exceeded $4 million in your own business before you're even helping these cohorts, right? So we're teaching you how to do it with people who've already done it 4 times over what you're trying to accomplish. So really, really valuable. We've had 21% year-over-year graduation rates, which means 21% of our participants get to $1 million in revenue in their own business. Which if you think about that through like an academic, 21%, well, that's an F. Well, actually, less than 4% of all businesses nationally, forget the minority women designation, less than 4% of all businesses nationally ever get to $1 million. So we're crushing it, right? We're doing that 5 times over. We're seeing 38% year-over-year revenue growth, so these businesses are really growing. And we're industry agnostic, so it doesn't matter if you're a tech company, a trucking company, a restaurant. We don't do a ton of restaurants, it's hard to scale. A consulting company, right? We don't care. What we care about is, do you meet the eligibility requirements, and do you have clear thoughts around how you want to go scale your business, right? And there's a 2-interview process that you go through, et cetera. But again, when I came in, that's all we had. And so I knew instantly that we needed to add more, because if you're a funder for the small business community and that's not your thing, we can't really have a conversation, right? And entrepreneurs would need way more support than just this one business accelerator. So over the first 2 years, what we did is we stood up 4 additional programs that have been really valuable. One's called RISE. It's a technology platform. RISE stands for Regional Innovation and Support for Entrepreneurs. It has artificial intelligence that scrapes the internet. I'll get a little sort of nerdy here. You can define a geography. So let's say you want just the Charlotte area, or if you want all of the Charlotte region, you define those geographies, and the tool automatically goes out and pulls in small business resources, so we don't have to do that manually. We also don't have to keep them up to date manually either. Now we can add resources to the system as well, and those we do have to, but 98% of those resources that get served up in the platform happen automatically by the tool. And so we support that program. What that looks like, let's say you're an entrepreneur, you're a woman, you're looking for access to capital in the form of grants in Mecklenburg County, you just go put those parameters in the tool itself, and if those resources exist, they get published right there before your eyes, and you can go engage with them directly there. You know who to call, who the organization is, and what their programs are. So we had 3,500 unique visitors to that site last year. It's been really, really effective. But the resource ecosystem in Charlotte is still very complex. It's overly complicated. So we're constantly trying to find ways to simplify it so business owners can find the resources that they need. The other thing that we did last year that was really, really unique, that no one's done nationally, is we stood up a program called Catch Your Breath, which is focused on holistic health and wellness for entrepreneurs. So most people don't know this, but entrepreneurs have a much higher incidence of mental health crises than other professions do, which intuitively you can kind of understand, right? Like, of course they do. They're pouring everything they've got financially and otherwise into, really chasing their dreams. Well, they tend to take care of their families and themselves at the very end of all of that. And so we wanted to make sure that people understand, look, we think about businesses through the lens of, are you growing financially? Are you operationally excellent? What's your customer service model? And all of those sort of things. And those are important, but we tend to forget there are people running these businesses, right? And they're real people with real emotions and real trauma that they're bringing to the table as well. And so how do we go help them recognize burnout and then have personal strategies to address that burnout directly? So it was a 6-month program. We did 3 community conversations on things like the art of rest and relaxation, personal wellness, things like that. And then we had a 12-week cohort process that we ran. It was application only. We had about 25 people run through that. It was a deep dive into the 4 areas of personal wellness. So think mental, physical, social, emotional, and I'm forgetting one, financial. And so 25 people graduated from that cohort. And then in October, which is International Mental Health Awareness Month, We just did an event that I just called Loving on Entrepreneurs. We rented out the Duke Mansion, the grounds around it, and we invited people in. So we had yoga, we had chair massages, we had music, we had food and drinks. And it was just a way to sort of celebrate entrepreneurs and help them have 4 hours to just escape from the daily lives where they're just all consumed by chasing their dream. It was an extremely expensive program to put on, so we put it on the shelf for this year, but we hope to bring it back next year. We served about 205 businesses through that Catch Your Breath program. The other thing that we did over the last 2 years prior to this year is we launched an initiative called the African American Leadership Academy, which has nothing to do with small business. But you guys may know Elizabeth Trotman, formerly with the Foundation for the Carolinas, now has a consulting company called One Catalyst. And she's from Columbus, Ohio, and the African American Leadership Academy started there. They've done it for, I think, 21 years. They've seen over 300 leaders pass through their program and really start to level up their careers. And the central goal for that program is to help drive Black business leaders in all three sectors, public, private, and nonprofit sectors, build the capacity, the leadership capacity from an emotional intelligence perspective, level up their careers. So we're about to launch our third cohort through that. We've had 30 leaders go through the program. We've had 5 different promotions to people moving up in their organizations, which has been really incredible to see. And these cohorts, it's really interesting because we're not talking about the things that most leadership programs are talking about. It's really about how to make sure that you know how to show up in the rooms that you're going to be in, how to handle tricky boardroom conversations and the like. And so I've been really pleased to see the progress there. We're going to continue to invest. It's an initiative of our foundation, and so we've decided to fund it at the highest levels. In fact, we're wrapping up our 3rd year, and we'll likely re-up for another 3 years of funding for that initiative. And then the final thing I'll mention that we started last year, on May 14th, we launched a program called the Small Business Growth Fund. So it is funded by 5 catalytic funders. We put about $250,000 of our own money, but outside of us, Ally, Charitable Foundation, Atrium Health, Bank of America, City of Charlotte, and Truist provided $18 million in catalytic funding to support small businesses with loans. And it's designed for those business owners who can't step into a traditional financial center and get a loan because maybe they've got credit score challenges, maybe they haven't been in business long enough to have a 3-year cash flow record yet. We designed it specifically for them to make the dollars really, really accessible because, as you guys probably know, the #1 barrier to starting, running, and growing a business is capital. And so we try to make no assumptions when we deliver the program about where people were. We want to meet them where they are, make the requirements as low as possible. Some people hear, oh, that's really risky, right? It's a really risky program, but we have our community development financial institutions like Aspire, Community Capital, and BevCorp, and 3 others that are engaged in the work, and they support these small business owners for the life of the loan. So these are 4-year terms on these loans, and they're going to be there to provide you with support, programming, wraparound services to try to help ensure that you're successful. So we feel good that we put a stopgap in place there to help make sure that those business owners have the resources that they need to be successful. So that was really the first 2 years. We didn't sleep a whole lot during that time. I mean, we were running really, really hard. People had to sort of call out to me, hey, I need you to slow down because it's clear that you're doing too much, but I really wanted to make sure that we came in here and delivered value quickly. So now our direction for the future gets changed to some degree. So I mentioned the Scale Up program. We were talking earlier around what $1 million doesn't really do for a small business. So we hear $1 million. $1 million isn't what it used to be at all. But it's an incredible milestone for a business owner to get to. But it doesn't do the 3 things that we ultimately want to do, right? 1, we want to grow the economy, which means people are like hiring people. They're able to bring on more staff. That helps, when you have more jobs available to the community. We also want to create generational wealth. $1 million, I mean, maybe you're able to hire somebody, maybe 2 people, depending on what your business model is. But it's not going to give you a business that you can then go hand down to someone. right? So we want to create generational wealth. And then the third thing we really want to do is we want to increase economic mobility. A lot of business owners at $1 billion in revenue still aren't paying themselves at all, right? Or maybe they're paying themselves $40,000 a year, right? And so we want to make sure that they're able to not just create economic mobility for themselves, but also for their teams, the people that are working for them as well. And so we want to take scale up to $10 million. We're fundraising right now for that. It'll be a 3-year plan that we hope to deliver on. And it may look like we'll do a $3 million program, a $7 million program, and then a $10 million program. So we've already won one grant towards that. We're talking to the city. We feel really confident the city's going to invest in the program. We've got some early conversations with the county. I've got time with Bank of America week after next. We're talking to Trio. So name your big funder in the community. We're talking about all this. And here's the other thing that we're focused on now. So you probably are aware about what's going on in Raleigh and the state capitol around this $26 billion transportation project. This is going to be a once-in-a-lifetime transformational project for this community, but only if we start thinking about how to make sure that the community is able to profit and benefit from that effort. So a lot of the work that we're focused on right now is trying to understand what types of jobs and businesses are needed. Small businesses in particular are needed to go help get some of those opportunities as we come down. So, if we're able to vote in November, then that means the money should start to flow late 2026. And we want to assess how many businesses that fit the type of work that's going to be needed, who's ready, and then how do we go build readiness for those who are not ready. So we're very early on. Those conversations are only a couple of weeks old, but we're going to spend a ton of time thinking about working on pushing to make sure that we've got tons of businesses that are ready, because you know how this thing goes, right? You get down the road, you're 6 months in, a year into the program, all the suppliers have been selected, right? And the small businesses sort of get left behind. So we're laser focused on making sure small businesses don't get left behind in the process. And so it's consuming a lot of our time already, and it's only a couple of weeks in that we've been focusing on it. The other thing we want to do is accelerate this small business growth fund that we've talked about as well. So we're going to make the loan application easier for people. We've got some testimonials from small businesses that have already taken on the loan. We're trying to educate people around the myths of taking on capital. We're moving into a different environment in Charlotte now where pandemic money has dried up for all intents and purposes. There aren't a ton of grants available. The Beyond Open grant process closed their final round last year as well, so the free money isn't going to be as abundant. So how do we educate people on, look, if you're going to take on capital, let's make sure you have the right supports in place to be able to do that and protect yourself and your business, et cetera. We'll continue, as I mentioned, to invest in the African American Leadership Academy, and then we'll continue to support the RISE platform and make sure that it's adding value to the community as well, so people, business owners in particular, when they have time, which could be at 3 a.m. in the morning, right? They have a tool that they can use that's going to be really easy for them to be able to leverage to figure out what resources are available. So with that being said, open it up for questions.
Man. Oh boy. So we're going to start with Mr. Combs, then we got Jay Hill, then we got Robert.
This first one doesn't count, but are you Casey King or Casey Moe?
Oh, it definitely counts. I promise you it counts.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, it's definitely Kansas City, Missouri. Yes.
Oh, okay. And I'll talk to you more about that.
Okay.
My name's Charles Owens. Should ring a bell with you. Chester Owens?
It does not.
Okay, yeah, we'll talk.
Okay.
Back in '83, when I started my own PR consultancy, first thing I did, the very first draw from my client check was to join the Chamber of Commerce. And from that, I established, in conjunction with another PR consultant, Business After Hours and the Executive Connections. I also joined the Charlotte Business League, which was the group of minority-owned businesses that included medical, dental, and pharmaceutical professionals. And when we got to 84 members, we thought we were really raising hell. And so now, as progressing 40 years later, 42 years later, it's ironic that I still see some of the efforts that were going back then, still in the process now. Why is that? Was things not serious then, or they purport to be serious now, or what's going on?
Yeah, so I obviously can't answer for what happened in the past. I wasn't here. Yeah, so here's I think the reality of it is when this alliance, the Charlotte Regional Business Alliance, was conceived, people thought bringing these two organizations, the Charlotte Chamber and the Charlotte Regional Partnership, together, that 1 + 1 would equal 3. And what I mean by that is that everybody who was funding, all the members who were funding both organizations, would then come together and fund at the same level one organization that they were funding into, and that did not happen. So that forced the organization to get really laser focused on who is our constituency. Now, the constituency has ended up being on just the alliance. I remember I said, well, I don't think you maybe were here initially, but there's two different organizations here. There's the alliance side, and then there's the foundation side, and we're sister organizations. I've got the worst reporting relationship ever, in that I have my board that I report to. I also report to the CEO of the alliance, and I report to their board by extension. So I've got like 80 bosses. I don't recommend that structure if you can avoid it. But what it's ended up being is that the alliance tends to be mid-market and large corporate enterprises. That's who they focus on. So I always tell people the easiest way to think about the difference between the two organizations is that we're the small business arm of the alliance. But even that isn't perfect, because the reality is we had to decide who are we going to focus on, and who in the community is able to focus on what I'll call micro businesses, Main Street businesses, mom and pop shops, your barbers, your restaurants, your really, really small, under $250,000 in revenue businesses. And there's no perfect answer to it in Charlotte right now. So there's the Charlotte Area Chamber that looks more like what an old chamber would have looked like, in that their main focus is they're putting on events. So if you want to go do networking events and you want to go hand out business cards to other small businesses and build relationships, there's nothing wrong with it at all. We feel like we've got a different value proposition though, right? So you heard the programs that we're rolling out, right? We're not an event sort of driven organization at all. We're trying to figure out how do we go focus on growing the economy, generational wealth, and increasing economic mobility. The old chamber model doesn't do that. And so, but what we do is we'll take calls, emails, posts on our website from anyone and everyone, and try to point them in the best direction based on where they are in their business and what they're trying to accomplish. So, we'll automatically make connections to the Charlotte Area Chamber if someone says, hey, I want to do some small business networking. If they're like, hey, I want to learn more about access to capital, we'll say, well, go to one of the CDFIs, and we'll make a connection there, because they're best equipped to go help you, again, depending on where you are. And so there is no perfect solution to or perfect answer today to what existed in the past, but there are 3 different organizations that are dialing into it in sort of the same fashion as the old chamber, but then you've got all these other resources that are available, and we try to help people navigate them to the best of our ability.
All right, Jay Hill.
Hey, Nate, how you doing?
Hi, Mr. Hill.
All right, so as regards to the African American Leadership Academy, can you lift up some of the challenges that specifically Black leaders go through here in Charlotte? And then on the Small Business Growth Fund side, can you talk about the challenges that you have to overcome with Black business owners not wanting to take on a loan?
We don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, you can do it real quick. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, look, I don't think I've spent a lot of time on the challenges that African American leaders face, whether you're talking about public, private, or nonprofit sectors. I mean, we're in a better place than we were in the 60s, but we're not in the right place, right? And so our leaders continue to get sort of either siloed into roles, right, and all of that, or there's bias against them. I mean, I got frequently sort of the microaggressions around saying things like, you're aggressive, when my white counterparts were assertive, right? One has a positive connotation, one has a negative connotation. We know which is which. Those things still persist today. I mean, that has not changed universally. There are some organizations that are doing better than others, of course, but it's not changed. Wanting to be able to come in and be who you are authentically in your organization continues to be a challenge, right? I mean, there's still organizations that focus on, certain hairstyles and things like that. Well, we've got different texture hair. We like to wear our hair differently than our white counterparts. Doesn't mean we're less valuable to the organization, but there's bias associated with it. We've seen everything that's happening through a national lens in the DEI space and how, that's only going to make things worse. We're going to go back a generation or two as a result of those efforts. You may or may not have heard, but the North Carolina State Legislature has a DEI bill going through the House and the Senate right now that's very likely to pass. That's going to prevent municipalities like the city and the county from being able to have programs like, they support our small business or our scale-up program, right? Well, it's focused for minority and women. Well, guess what? They're not going to be able to support going forward once that passes. So we're going to have to be creative to make sure the dollars still flow. But the challenges haven't changed much from a Black leader perspective, I think. On the small business side, access to capital continues to be a challenge. I think the one thing that we don't talk enough about is how are we actually making sure that our community understands the challenges they're going to face and get them ready to sort of address them head on. I don't know that this data is accurate per se, but I'll bet you that from a credit score perspective, we proportionally, we probably have worse credit scores than our white counterparts. That hurts us. So how do we educate our community on making sure that our credit's in order, what that looks like, how to budget, all of these things, right? There's a collective effort that we need to focus on. And then the final thing I'll say is it's not related to the Small Business Growth Fund, but is related to how we grow our businesses. We got to think about customer service differently than we historically have, and it's a conversation we don't like to have. But I think as a community, we do need to have it. Those are just a few tidbits.
All right, Robert.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My question is, you were speaking about RISE. Where exactly do I go to locate the software that you were mentioning that gives you those resources?
Yeah, you can go to cltalliancefoundation.net. Do you guys send out emails to the group? Maybe we can insert that in there and even give a direct link to the platform. Because you can go to ours, cltalliancefoundation.net. And then if you go to initiatives from there, the drop down, you'll see RISE in there. Yep.
Peace, Jamie here. I work with Advanced Carolina and North Carolina Black Alliance. So I appreciate the political aspects that you're bringing up, especially for businesses. Because a lot of times, especially in our community, we look at businesses and go after the money, but we don't understand the politics and the systems and policies that discriminate against us, that hinder us from that. And so I appreciate you bringing that into the space. Also, I'm a community organizer in Cabarrus County, and I have a question around work with Barber Scotia, and the project we're working on is actually towards their reaccreditation. Yes, that's towards my question. And so we're working towards rising of Barber Scotia, and I want to know, have you had conversations with President Chris Ray, or your willingness to have conversations with him, and what opportunities you could see yourself bringing to a reaccreditation of HBCU, Barber Scotia, in Cabarrus County?
Oh, wow. It's definitely not in our lane. Right, but you're talking about HBCU getting them reaccredited, right? And we're really, outside of the African American Leadership Academy work that we're doing, 95% of our work and our mission is directly related to small businesses. I'm happy to, I'll go sit down and talk to anyone, and if nothing else, maybe I have relationships here that can help. I don't know if Dr. Kinlock over at JCSU could be a valuable resource as well, just because she's in academia here and running an HBCU, and she I'm certain has relationships that I don't, both in the capital and otherwise. Apologies. I'm not sure what else I could do other than happy to have a conversation and maybe try to point people in a direction that I think makes sense.
And sorry, for context, I was more so thinking.
Whoa. We have rules. So there is no back and forth, but we will come back to you, make sure you get that second question. You wanna go ahead?
Good morning, this is Raven Morris. I'm a fellow with the Center for Racial Equity and Education, and I just finished a 6-year career as an educator. And I was just wondering, back to your Kansas City Public Schools experience, what value did you feel you brought to the school board that was missing? And then what skills do you feel that you developed as a result of your school board experience?
Yeah, wow, those are great questions. So one, I think the immediate value was I came from a corporate background. Well, let me start here. I grew up in the district, so I was very familiar with it, obviously, and its shortcomings, frankly. I started by talking about losing my sister at 10. That same year, my parents got divorced, and my grandmother, who I was really close with, passed as well. And so that's a lot for a kid to take on, right? The school district was ill-equipped to, one, recognize what was going on. I mean, I was a really, really good student until that age. And then my grades dropped off dramatically, right? I started skipping school. And I mean, it was clear that something was going on outside the four walls of the school, but no one recognized it at all. So having that context in my own personal experience, I think was really, really useful. The other thing I'd say is that, being in the private sector, in that world, you're either really, really good at what you do or you die, right? And so as an organization, it's very different than getting taxpayer dollars, right? Like a big chunk, I think it was like 70% of our revenue came from local property taxes. Well, in that environment, right, the money's just gonna flow. It's a very different model than having to go out and hunt every single day for the next meal, if you will. And so bringing that, not just a sense of urgency, but trying to help the bureaucracy get more effective and efficient in how they were operating, it was a big sort of focus area for me. The other thing that, well, I guess it's kind of part two to your question, I got a much deeper level of empathy for things that I didn't fully appreciate. I never got suspended while I was in school. And so, we were suspending kindergartners. Imagine that, like, wow. And this is under a really talented superintendent. Like, what did a kindergartner do that required you to say, oh, I'm gonna send you home, with no recognition of what your home life is even like? So for most of our kids in the urban core who are going to these public schools, school is the safest place and the most nutritional space for them to be in, right? And so we were suspending kids, and so we have an organization in Kansas City called More Squared, which is Metro Organization for Racial and Economic Equity. Yes. And they started pushing on the school district and the board to say, look here, they highlighted these inequities that existed. And so, look, I started pounding the diets, if you will, to say, we can't, this makes no sense, right? You've got to go figure something out. And, school districts and academics sometimes, it's like, you've got to go look at all the research and, 6 years later, maybe you'll implement some change. Well, that was unacceptable to me. And I compelled my school board members to believe in the same way. So we ended up getting rid of suspensions for pre-K through 4th grade. I actually thought we should go all the way up to senior year, as long as there was no harm to the student or others. 30 seconds more, I'm watching, man. No, Natalie is not messing around over here. This just got me nervous. I appreciate you.
Okay.
So Nate, I have a question. When it comes to entrepreneurship, I know there's a haze that can blind the vision of entrepreneurs. You think you're killing it because you're working hard.
Yeah.
So how do you convince entrepreneurs that you have a tool or a resource that can help scale their efforts, and let them know that there's another level to what you're doing? For example, Mr. Lilly here has been in business for,
42 years.
42 years in construction and trucking, and as your wife says, it's money in the dirt. What could a 12-week cohort provide to business owners that have 42 years of experience?
You're talking about specifically around sort of the health and wellness space, or are you talking about?
Oh, so that's the only portion, that's the 12 weeks?
Well, no, so Catch Your Breath, the program we did last year, it was a 6-month program, but 12 weeks of it is a cohort program that's focused on 4 areas of personal wellness. But if you're talking about like convincing them that it's time and that they're ready, or what it would look like to get into a scale-up program where the whole focus is to accelerate your business and get to $1 million plus, you're talking about that second part, right?
Right, and so if they're, kind of there, is there still room to go upward? Excuse me, this is privilege. I'm a facilitator.
Yeah, so Scale Up goes to $1 million right now, but we're building out over the next 3 years or so the program to go to 10 million. So you're not going to obviously take the businesses in a year from 1 million to 10, but you could take a business from 1 million to 3, and from 3 to 7, or from 7 to 10. And so that's what we're focused on, is how to get there. And I mean, for me, the main thing that we can say to convince people is that 21% graduation rate, 38% year-over-year revenue growth. If that's not attractive to you, that we're graduating, 5 times the national average, getting them to the goal that we aspire to and that they aspire to, and that consistent revenue growth year-over-year isn't going to get you there, I'm not sure what else is going to convince you, right? For us, it's about the data. And there are other business accelerators in the region who can't tell you what their metrics are. They can't tell you where their businesses are when they leave their program, et cetera. That's not our jam, right? We're very, very data-driven in how we think about this world, and so that's the main driver for us. Is if you want to achieve something and those are one of your goals, then we can get you there. Now, it requires a ton of work, right, from the business owner, of course. I mean, we're the facilitators and mentors. We're all here to sort of support, but at the end of the day, you've got to have the drive to get there. And you're going to be challenged, right, by your peers in those accountability groups.
All right, well, there you go, Mr. Lilly.
Mr. Lilly.
My wife is business, not me. But question, a part of y'all's process or whatever is within that to help someone identify that this may not be something for you?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have people that come into the cohort every single year, and we have attrition, right? Not everybody gets through the full year. Some people check out in 3 months, right? And we are like extremely transparent around the work that it's going to require. You can't come in there and go, well, look, I'm going to dial it in this month. Because your peers are going to be asking you, wait a minute, you committed to this last month that you're going to do A, B, and C in your business. You didn't do it. Why is that? And it's not a judgment zone. It's really about you committed to your business and to yourself to go do these things. What happened, right? And so we do have attrition. We have people that sort of kind of flow out of the program, and we're okay with that. What we're not going to do is make it less rigorous, so people can come in there and just say they graduated from something, right? Or even attended it.
Back to you, James.
Sorry, okay, so you were just trying to give me clarity on your question.
Yes, sorry, I hadn't had time in my original question. I was going to add this, but the question for Barber Scotia was particularly because they have a program, a business and leadership program for students, and so I was just thinking an invitation and consideration for those students and what resources could be brought there.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk through what that could look like. We're doing something, I'd say, kind of similar with JCSU that we're going to plan for this year, where they've got students who are entrepreneurs as well, right? Who understand that, yeah, they're going to get a business degree, but their whole goal is to run their own business. So we're going to do a program with them. Happy to sort of talk through what it could look like.
Quickly, before we go to Ms. McCletty, are there qualifications for any of what you offer limited to Mecklenburg County?
So we just expanded the Small Business Growth Fund region-wide, so it's 14 counties, 10 on the North Carolina side. And so that one's open. Scale Up is open to the entire region as well. Trying to think through. The African American Leadership Academy, we're actually having active conversations. Originally it was only Met County, but we may expand that to the region as well. RISE is open to everyone in the region. So most of it is already open, or there's active discussions about opening it to the entire region.
All right, we got Ms. McCletty, then we have Mr. Patton.
Okay, apologies for being late. We may have already covered this. But with the small business starting out, do you all have available mentors to assist them in the areas that they're going to start working in? And larger corporations or, I guess, other business owners, do you match them up if you're working with startup businesses? Do you work with startup businesses?
Two good questions. One, Manuel Campbell just stepped in a few minutes ago, and so like organizations like Aspire Community Capital can help with your first question around small businesses. They're just trying to figure out, like, what does this look like to start a business? Maybe they only have an idea today. There are other organizations, if you're a creative entrepreneur, it could be Charlotte is Creative. They have programs to help people ideate around what their business could look like, what it could be, where the programs are, et cetera. So there are multiple organizations in Charlotte that can help with your first question. The startup is just trying to figure it out. On your second question, so yes, we do connect. So the Scale Up program, the Business Accelerator for minority women-owned small businesses, we will make direct connections for some businesses that go through the cohort. Not every business is ready to go talk to a large enterprise, right, about doing a transaction. And so we want to make sure that they're ready, because there is this thing, if you take on a contract that's too big, it could crush you, as well as a business owner. So we want to be thoughtful about who we make connections to. But yeah, that's a big part of our value proposition, why I say that we're different than sort of the Charlotte area chamber or even the old chamber model. We try to make connections where it makes sense to do so.
Mr. Patton.
Good morning, Mr. Hogan.
Good morning.
I appreciate you acknowledging the 1% sales tax that's possibly going to be on the ballot in November. That's a hot topic matter in our county. And with that, it goes along with small businesses that are going to be left out if that tax is passed, I guess, so to speak, or not passed, particularly as it relates to our communities that are being gentrified. Do you have any specific programs or resources to keep those small businesses intact? An example of that is Wayne Superfood Market near Camp Northia. I talked about it yesterday. Eventually, they're going to be pushed out as a result of all the economic growth that's being poured into those areas. What do you have as far as programming to support those businesses?
Yeah, we don't have anything that's directly related to that. What I would tell you is what we do and what we try to work with our ecosystem partners to do is make sure that those businesses are running well, because that's a big part of it, right? If you're generating good revenue and your business is running well, that can be a little bit of a defense for what's coming, but it's not always. So we don't have anything directly related to it. I'll tell you, this is off the cuff, but this is an area where I think municipalities don't do a good job of supporting sort of what I'll call legacy residents in neighborhoods. I've always thought that those organizations, the public sector, have opportunities that they almost never leverage, that I don't fully appreciate why that's the case. For example, could you put a cap on property taxes, right, for legacy residents? Because a lot of times that's what pushes them out of the community. Now that doesn't necessarily apply to a small business owner, but thinking about the residential side of things, right? You get pushed out because your property taxes go through the roof because your neighborhood has been gentrified with much bigger houses, newer houses, et cetera. Well, how do we go cap for those legacy residents for some period of time to make sure that that doesn't drive them out of their house? Gentrification to me is such a nuanced thing, and nobody wants to talk about the nuance, because who doesn't want their property tax values to go up? Everybody does, right? But that comes with cost in the form of property taxes that legacy residents oftentimes can't afford. And so it's not our lane, but I have all sorts of thoughts about it that I'm totally speaking out of turn. And I noticed Eric walked in, so this is hopefully doesn't end up in a business journal. But I mean, maybe it does. Maybe it pushes somebody. I don't know. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
Also, Mr. Patton, Wayne's now sells kombucha, so they are pushing back. Mr. Cooks.
Thanks for that information. I'll check. There's a new thing in town called the internet. And there's a variety of online business options for entrepreneurs and business owners to do everything from credit repair to startup corporate structure developments. My question is, are any of those your competitors? And if so, how do you view them and how do you navigate around them?
Yeah, so first of all, just as a warning, I'd stay away from almost all of the credit repair organizations, right? A lot of that is a scam. There's not a lot there's so much that you can do on your own where you don't need to pay someone to do it for you. That's one thing I would recommend you stay away from the credit repair companies. So I don't actually think of any online thing as a competitor. I mean, there are some online business accelerators, but I'm sorry, nothing replaces the one-on-one interaction, coaching, mentoring that you're going to get in a room live with a human, right? So when we talk about AI and things like that, people go, oh, every job's going to go away. Every job's not going to go away. There are ones that are going to go away, though. We should be thinking about those and how to sort of upskill people so they can take on more, or different jobs. I don't think of any of those as competitors of ours. I've talked to several that want to sort of enter the Charlotte market. They want to sort of partner with us in some way, and I'm just sort of I don't hear anything that compels me to go do that. I don't worry about those. Actually, I don't worry about competitors at all in this space because one, I don't think that there's a lot of folks that can do what we're doing because of our relationship with the Alliance side of the house. And I think we have a pretty good thing going as well. I'm not ignorant to the fact that competitors could come in and sort of unseat us, if you will, but right now I don't think there's such a thing. If anything, we have too many different organizations doing similar things in this community. And we did a whole analysis a couple of months ago that I think proves some of that stuff out too.
Ms. McClay.
Okay, I'm just piggybacking on what Ken just asked, but I want clarification as well.
Okay.
The collaboration that you could possibly have across this city is what you're saying. It's too much going on. Too many people are trying to do some of the same things. And I know that back in the 90s, we had an incubator. And I know last week we had the North Carolina Institute here talking about the incubator. And UNC had an incubator. And we know what incubation is all about, a startup. But if you are not open to collaborate with these other entities out here that are using some of the same terms as it relates to a startup business or businesses, is that something that you would consider? You're saying that it's so many of them. Would you consider trying to form some type of group so you all can collaborate, so you won't be doing so much duplications across? I know it's big. We need as much as we can possibly get for the small business person. But is that something, you may have mentioned it before I got here. Okay. But is it something that you could possibly consider, or would you consider something like that?
Yeah, so thanks for the additional question. Let me be clear. I did mention we don't want to collaborate or that we won't collaborate. In fact, we collaborate all the time, right? Some of that collaboration is very easy. We get a call or an email from a small business owner that needs a service or support around something we don't do, and what do? We go connect them to those other partners. My point around duplication is, I'll give you an example. So just bear with me for a second. We did an analysis that we looked at who are all of the entrepreneurial support organizations in the region. And there's about 42 of them that are actively engaged. And we said, okay, what work are they doing across these different areas of small business support? So think things like Business Accelerator, like our Scale Up program, mentoring and coaching, hubs and spaces that are designed to intentionally connect people, access to capital opportunities. There's 6 of them that we looked at. And we said, okay, who's doing what across those 6 areas of work? And then who are they doing that work for? Meaning the revenue range of the business. So 0 to 50,000, 50,000 to 250, 250 to $1 million, and $1 million plus. And what becomes really clear is this community has been extremely charitable for the small businesses that are between $0 and $250,000. There's a ton of resources available. Now it's tricky to navigate them, but they're all available. But once you hit $250,000 as a business owner, 50% of your supports go away. Right? And then once you get to $1 million, there's almost nothing available for them at all. And so I circle back to sort of my earlier point around if we're trying to grow the economy, create generational wealth, and increase economic mobility, $1 million business doesn't really do any of those things, right? So we need to get people above $1 million. And so an additional point here is that in the coaching and mentoring category of work, there are 18 different organizations doing that same work for businesses between $0 and $250,000. There's clearly duplication, right? Charlotte's a decent sized city, but it's not big enough to have 18 different organizations doing that work. So our thought is, how do we go upskill those nonprofits that are doing the work at that level so that they can take on the work where there's a gap, right? 250 and $1 million and above to that work. And so we'll collaborate with anybody where it makes sense to do so. We just feel like funder dollars are not being spread where the need is most. And the funders don't know, right? Like if you're a Bank of America, for example, who's been extremely charitable in this community, in the small business space, you don't know where those needs are, which is why we're doing some of these analyses now, right? We want to understand the ecosystem deeply so that we can spread dollars more equitably across it where it's needed the most. Does that help?
So, I have a question. What exactly would you say the magic is that helps you get to that 21% mark? Is it procurement opportunities? Is it just straight out coaching? Is it, again, just the connections you have within the organization that could highlight small businesses? What is it exactly, or do you feel like is in the formula that helps a business get to where it could go?
Yeah, I think it's maybe threefold. One, the FUBU model, right? The for entrepreneurs by entrepreneurs, getting coached by someone who's actually done it. There's a huge amount of value in that, right? Nothing wrong with academics, but if you've never done something, it's hard for you to convey how to do it, and even more difficult for someone to bring you a business problem that they're currently experiencing and you being able to help them work through that. So the FUBU model is really important. The accountability groups, people will tell you, a lot of entrepreneurs will go, well, I mean, the learning days with strategy, people execution, and cash are really great. But those accountability groups where I've got my fellow entrepreneurs challenging me based on what I told them I was committed to for the next month is a tremendous amount. And it's funny because we don't break the cohorts down by industry, right? So you're not necessarily, if you're a construction company, you're not necessarily sitting in a cohort with other construction companies. But there's value in hearing how other industries are solving problems that you don't get if you're only sort of working with and sort of hanging out, if you will, with others in the same industry as you. And then the learning days, it's funny because I remember when I first came in and I was learning about Scale Up, and I'm thinking, well, why would you go repeat it? Because the program repeats. You can do it for up to 3 years, but the program repeats every year. It's like, why would someone do it more than once? Well, depending on where I am in my business life cycle and the problem I'm experiencing today, strategy in my first year may be the thing that I geek out on and I go all in and I get value from. But in year 2, it may be the cash portion of it, right? My financials, how do I get strategic about leveraging where my dollars flow, and how do I deeply understand my financials enough to go talk to someone in a bank to get a loan, for example, or a line of credit or whatever. And so I think it's those 3 things, right? The learning days and where I am in my business, the accountability group, being pushed by my peers, and then the FUBU model, being taught by people who've done it, and that's a very different model than everything else that's out there.
Thank you. So, any more questions? It is 9:43, last call. All right, with that said, Mr. Nate Hogan, if you would take 2 minutes to close us out, and we will go into announcements.
Yeah, I'll just end where I started. I'm just really appreciative that you guys allowed me to come in and speak. And this is really important work. I love it. I get to wake up every single day thinking about how to use a God-given talent and a bunch of professional experience to help other people achieve their dreams. And I don't think there's anything in any other way I would rather spend my morning than being able to share that with you guys. And happy to support you or others that you know, even if that support looks like sending you to another organization based on where you guys are in your business. And so, yeah, just thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, give it up one time for Mr. Nate Hogan. We will have announcements now. If you have an announcement, Jasmine, you want to go ahead and set it off?
Yes, I have an announcement. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Beloved Community Center. They hosted the Long March. They stopped in Charlotte. Well, I'll be working with them this Saturday. We are hosting a community coalition meeting. I will give you the address because I can't remember the name of the school. I just sent all of that stuff to Steve. But this Saturday at 12 p.m., we'll be hosting a community coalition meeting. So we're looking for some Charlotte leaders to show up. I'll be sure to send that information to Steve.
All right, where's the school again? Let me see if I can
I'm
go back.
gonna tell you, I know it's in a modular building,
In a what?
modular H, but I'm about to tell you.
Oh, they still have trailers at the school? Oh, man. All right, any more announcements while Jasmine? All right, behind you, Jazz.
Good morning, excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Hello, Nate. My name is Rocio Gonzalez, representing the National Institute of Minority Economic Development and the Women's Business Center of Charlotte. We were here last week. But my announcement is to invite everybody that on Wednesdays, you can go to the West End Historic Neighborhoods for Wednesday, West End Wednesdays, to support all of the businesses in the Batesford Road neighborhood. So it's going to be hot out there, and they're going to have food and all the wonderful things that these restaurants and these neighborhoods are.
Where exactly?
On Batesford Road, different restaurants are the ones that do it every Wednesday.
Oh, okay.
So visit the Historic West End website to learn which business is going to be supported.
Chicken and ribs, West End Seafood, Archive, Mackin's Bridal, give me some more. Rosa Park, Nicky's. All right, we got D'Amico. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, I'd like to announce a forum that's going to be this Saturday, June the 28th, from 10 to 12:30 at Bruns Avenue Elementary School. It's called What's Going On? The Impact of Federal Budget Cuts on Education, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. So all of us in this room are affected in one of those, okay, at least. The keynote speaker is, who's going to talk to us would be Senator Alma Adams. We're going to have Congresswoman, Congresswoman Alma Adams. We have Senator Mujaba Muhammad of the North Carolina Senate, and we have Chairman Mark Jarrell of the Mecklenburg County Commission. This program is sponsored by Rosa Omega and Omega Iota Omega chapters of Alpha Kappa Alpha. This is for everyone. Please come out Saturday at Bruns Avenue at 10 o'clock and find out about it. So don't be surprised when stuff happens, okay? Know about it in advance.
I got the address to that school, so after y'all hit that event, y'all gonna come on down to 314 Bank Street at Marie G. Davis.
Oh, Marie G. Davis, Southside, right outside Triangle.
And we'll be in Modular H in the Mecklenburg Council of Elders building.
That makes sense. Now that they have modular trailers. All right, go ahead, D'Amico.
Good morning. I am here representing Charlotte Area Fund on this coming Thursday. I just wanted to announce that we will graduate over 100 individuals from various areas of focus. That'll take place at Friendship Missionary Baptist Church. We'll be there from 5:30 until 7:30. The community is invited. Also, we partnered with the Summer Jazz Series that will take place on Thursdays as posted. I would send you to the site, but we are advocating for an aspect of health that's very rarely recognized, which is relational health, mental health, and socioeconomic health. And so if you log on to the Amp Valentine website and use code Date Night, you will receive a discount. Again, this Thursday is Bonnie James, and July 10th is Najee and Regina Bell. So if you use the promo code Date Night, you'll receive a discount. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, D'Amico.
Everybody has a purpose. Everything has a place. Every day has opportunities just waiting to be embraced. I'm Thornton Howard III, and some of y'all know me. I'm formerly known as Mr. Full Letter. I worked at CMS for 20 years plus. As a math teacher in middle school, James Martin, Martin Luther King, and Ransom Middle School. And I developed a program called Going Forward, using four-letter words in a positive way. And so anybody who wants me to stop by, for those who know me, for any activities going on this summer, I will be available to do Mr. Four Letter on tour. 3rd grade through 8th grade, to me, is the most impactful time in a child's life. And I don't think we have enough intentional efforts right in that area, and that's what I'm committed to do. So whatever I can do in that regard, I'll be glad to do that. But and if you want to go to my YouTube channel, which is faceless, called 4 Letters for Life, and you'll see what I'm doing with that. I'm spending 1 minute each week on a 4-letter word. Know that you're able, give your best, show that you care, get it done. And it's so many other words that's in my booklet called Going Forward. But I appreciate you. If you need some help, just call on me. I'll be there. I'm not charging. But we got to save our youth, y'all. We're losing too many. I retired in 2023. And I've been subbing at Ransom Middle School for the last 2 years, though. And they're 2 and 3 years behind academically. The social emotional aspect, y'all know about that too. We've got to do something there. But anyway, I'm closing out. Thank you for listening, and God bless you. Have a great day.
Mr. Full Letter Word. Mixtape dropping soon. Robert.
You got that right.
Good morning, I'm Mr. RC, Greater Thoughts Radio Show. After you do all this good stuff on Wednesday, 8 o'clock a.m. Thursday morning, tune into the radio show. You can go to the website, theuntrappedmind.com. This week's show will have NFL retiree Tony Covington, and you will be blessed by the message, I guarantee it.
Thank you, Robert. We got an announcement from Shay. Then Mr. Combs.
All right. I wanted to encourage everyone to tune into the Lost Soldiers podcast, the Save Cedar Grove work we've been doing. You can have a listen nationally every Friday night at 9 p.m. and it also lives on SoundCloud. Also doing some fundraising for a literacy camp we're doing this summer for 20 rising 3rd graders. It's called Camp Star, and I'm hoping to be able to pay my facilitators this year. So reach out to us through the site and help us out if you can.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Combs. Here we go.
On behalf of Archive and also in collaboration with the For the Struggle, in collaboration with Archive. Thank you all for coming and participating in Juneteenth this past Saturday. I was out there and I took pictures and produced I won't say a memorial, but something that you can always look back at and refer to. So thank you all for coming, and God bless you, God keep you, and lock the door and put some money in my hand.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for attending today's Sarah Stevenson Tuesday Morning Forum. I hope you're here next week, where our guest will be former Obama Administration Secretary of Transportation, Mr. Anthony Fox. Here to talk about this tax must be a big deal. They're bringing in a big wig. So come back next week, get your seats. Dr. Thomas, play it out.
This is the business. This is the business.